Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. My name is Hannah and on this channel I post a lot of anti-MLM content. As always, I'll link a playlist here and down below. This is my big anti-MLM playlist. Over 100 MLM horror story, top fails, Zoom calls, and deep dives on that playlist for you. Super bingeable, and if any of that content interests you, I would love it if you would consider subscribing and liking this video. Those things really help to support my channel and I appreciate you so much for doing that. Today there's another MLM horror stories coming at you. These are the personal experiences that people have had with MLM companies that they have written out and sent to me. If you have your own, the instructions for how to send that my way are in the description box below. But before we get to reading these stories, I want to give a huge thank you to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video. Scentbird is reimagining the way people discover, shop for, and experience fragrances. You've heard me talk about Scentbird before on my channel. We are big fans around here. This is a flexible fragrance subscription service where you get to choose a new designer fragrance each month. You're in control, so there's no surprises. If you're not sure where to begin, don't worry, Scentbird is already a step ahead of you. They have a really easy quiz on their website to get you started. And the best part is that these fragrances come in a 30-day supply for only $17. That is a steal in the fragrance world. This month I received Room 1015 Holly Rose, Commodity Gold, and Confessions of a Rebel Bite Me. My absolute favorite of these three is Bite Me. The card that comes with it says that it has notes of strawberry, red apple, vanilla orchid, jasmine, and golden rum. And honestly, I'm not really a huge fan of floral scents, but the floral notes in here mixed with the fruit is kind of perfection. And I'm surprised that I like this as much as I do. If I were to just read the description, I probably would have bypassed it. But that's kind of the cool thing about Scentbird, is you can experiment with new fragrances that you probably wouldn't otherwise try, and it's not gonna break the bank. And another pretty cool way that I used Scentbird recently is when I worked with them in the past, they sent me Versace Bright Crystal. I loved it immediately, but what I did is I saved it for my honeymoon in Cancun. We just went on that trip a couple of weeks ago, and I was so thankful to have Scentbird on hand because packing fragrances is a hassle. I even have this travel size one, but it's still glass and I still feel like I need to wrap it in bubble wrap or something in order to pack it anywhere. This kind of packaging just is not as practical as the Scentbird packaging. The fragrances pop in and out so easily and you just twist it down, it's secure. And the point of me bringing up this Mexico trip is because I saved that fragrance, I took it to Mexico, I used it every single day we were there. And as you may know, certain scents are heavily connected to our memories, which is pretty awesome because every time I smell Bright Crystal now, it takes me right back to our honeymoon. It's heavily tied to those memories, which I think is so special. And truthfully, I probably wouldn't have packed a fragrance at all if I didn't have Scentbird making it so convenient. If you would like to get started trying out new fragrances at Scentbird, you can visit the link in the description box and use the code Alonzo55 at checkout. This is going to give you 55% off your first month at Scentbird. Thanks again, Scentbird, for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get on to the horror stories. This one says, "Hi Hannah, I found your videos recently and have been hooked. I fall asleep to cult/true crime content, and one night I woke up to your MLM horror stories #2, and I've been binging them ever since. Thank you, YouTube algorithm." Yeah, a lot of people found my channel through that video, which I think is super cool. Thank you, algorithm gods. I didn't think that I had any stories to share because I am lucky enough to not have any family or friends in any MLMs. And honestly, I didn't know anything about them until the Unwell docuseries on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend the one on essential oils because it was wild and goes into fairly good detail about both Young Living and doTERRA. I have seen it. It is good. After watching that, I thought I had escaped this far in life unscathed by any MLMs. I was wrong. I actually have 3 different stories, but I will save the craziest one for the end. This first story happened very recently. I moved in to live with my sister and brother-in-law while my boyfriend is currently going through chemo. Money is tight, so we both moved in with family to save as much as we could while he is going through treatment. My sister recently purchased a beautiful new townhouse with tons of light and large windows all around the front left side and back of the home. This is important. Now, both my sister and I have some mild social anxiety and a desperate need to feel polite. So when we heard a knock at the door and I looked up, we couldn't hide from the smiling rep staring at us through the window by the front door. We couldn't hide like we wanted to, so we let her in. Honestly, nothing crazy happened while she was there, except my brother-in-law turned on our Roomba remotely from upstairs to interrupt her sales pitch. I had to bite my tongue to stop from laughing. She left with no fuss, but when I went upstairs, I noticed that not only was she working the front windows of the houses in our community, her husband was going to the backs of the houses too. I guess they were utilizing the large windows on everyone's houses to make sure no one was hiding from them. So creepy. I couldn't imagine how scared I would have been to see people at both the front and back of my house. Actually, my worst nightmare. Don't go walking around to the back of people's houses. Do not invite yourself onto their property. Come to the front door, knock. I might ignore you, and that's gonna have to be okay with you. Do not come to the back of my house. Oh my God, that's so scary. Next story. I used to work around the cancer care center at Duke University Hospital, and for months I would always see this pink Cadillac in the valet parking area outside of the hospital. One day I noticed that several patients were walking out with these Mary Kay packages, and someone told me that this one patient had been kind enough to give out these packages to several lucky individuals around the hospital. I didn't think twice about it until I found anti-MLM content and realized that this patient must have been hosting parties or something like that during her treatment for other patients that were there. She must have been doing well because my boyfriend tells me that she still rolls up to the cancer center in her company car. I shudder to think about how she took the opportunity to pitch her company and products to people. I also find it so sad that she had to keep pushing the products while on treatment herself. Now that my boyfriend is also going through chemo, I know the physical and emotional toll that both the patients and caregivers go through, and I can see how she would be able to rope people in who are desperate for financial hope or who are just too tired to fight her off. I really hope that nothing bad happened to the patients that she targeted. That's an interesting twist to the story if she herself is getting treatment for cancer, but I don't think this is the first time that I've heard of Mary Kay reps in particular going into hospitals, making their rounds, talking to people, giving out little goodie bags and stuff, which in itself is not a bad thing. But if there is a little bit of recruitment involved or a little bit of pitching the business involved, that's where I would draw the line. That's where it crosses over into being really inappropriate. This story says, content warning, light mentions of verbal abuse and pet death. Okay, now on to my last story, which is also my first run-in with an MLM. So while I was in college, I was dating this trash can of a human. I didn't know this at the time, and he wanted to introduce me to his family. Since his family lived in the same town as our college, I said, why not? Once we arrived, I was overwhelmed by the Christian decor, Christian music, and a prominently displayed pile of Juice Plus supplies in the front room of the house. Now, no shame to Christians or any other religion at all. I only mention it because it applies later in the story. I am quickly swept over to the Juice Plus section of the living room and am given a sales pitch by my ex's mom before I even had the chance to take off my jacket. Her daughters, 17 and 15, told me about how they sell them to the kids at school and how excited they were to already have a business at such a young age. I think that they were working for their mom but weren't reps themselves because of their age. Yeah, I don't think you can join an MLM if you're not 18. They were definitely just doing labor for their mom. I was told by everyone there how Juice Plus was a gift from God and how God himself must have guided the creators of the company as the products were, quote, healing and a true miracle like in the Bible. Now, I am atheist myself, so their pitch went right in one ear and out the other. My boyfriend had never mentioned being religious, so I assumed that it was just how his family was, not him. We get to dinner and they kept telling me about how Juice Plus had saved my ex's grandmother from dementia and begged me to start taking it myself for my own health. They also wanted me to come to church, weekly Bible study, and of course their weekly Juice Plus meetings. I politely declined as I am honestly just bad about taking any medicine and would never remember to take a supplement if I couldn't remember to take other real medicine, and I let them know that I'm not religious. I guess they didn't like that answer because they shut down fairly quickly. This whole time there is this adorable puppy running around the house that I fell in love with instantly. She was so gentle and sweet and just as cute as can be. So you can imagine my horror when my ex's mom told me that they had never taken this cutie to the vet. I was horrified and I asked her about the shots that puppies need. Her response? Oh, she doesn't need any of that poison. We have been giving her Juice Plus ever since we got her and she's doing just fine. No. For the love of God, take your pets to the vet. There are all kinds of viruses and diseases that they can catch, especially puppies, especially dogs who are out and about in the community. For the sake of public health, please get your pets vaccinated. I was horrified and probably visibly cringed. I've never believed in supplements that aren't prescribed by a doctor, human or canine, and I couldn't imagine not taking a puppy to get perfectly preventable treatment for common issues. She continued to rant about the harm of vaccines and how soon Juice Plus will be used for every child instead of vaccination. Oh no. My ex must have seen my face because he insisted on leaving pretty quickly after that. His mom said her goodbyes, but not before pushing a few bags of supplements in my arms and telling me to let her know if I feel the quote, healing power of Jesus Christ. You know what? Like you said, if you are religious, that's wonderful. Love that for you. But it is really important to this story because of how interwoven the religion is with the MLM. That is dangerous. When you get people out here believing that the products are, quote, created by God and they're going to give you, quote, the healing power of Jesus Christ, that is alarming because, as we know, MLMs are scams, with the goal being to suck people in and keep them in. So when you have people believing that the products they're taking with this MLM have this kind of divine power over them, that right there traps them in the MLM for way longer than they should be. It's called faith manipulation. It's taking your pre-existing beliefs and tying them into the scam to keep the scam alive. I gave the supplements away to a friend as soon as I got home and forgot about the whole incident. Well, until it was time to go see mom again. As soon as I walked in the door, I was stunned. The mom and daughters had asked us to come over for the healing session for the puppy. I looked over at my ex and he agreed with his mom that it was needed. I couldn't believe my eyes or ears, but he convinced me to go see the dog. It turns out that the puppy had some sort of illness. We never found out what it was because mom wouldn't take the puppy to the vet and was on death's door. They insisted that it was the devil, as they had, in their eyes, done everything they could for the dog. No, you didn't. You didn't do everything you could for the dog. They had moved the dog to a vegan diet, cue eye rolls, and upped the dog's Juice Plus dose to a capsule every hour. While they prayed over the obviously malnourished and dying dog, I was texting my friends to help me figure out what to do. I cried all the way home while my ex told me to stop being a little and that if the dog died, it would be my fault because I'm an atheist. You are kidding me. Remember that up until this point, he had never mentioned being religious and had told me that being an atheist wasn't an issue. Well, the dog did die, and I was blamed for bringing the devil into their house. They're blaming you for being an atheist when they chose not to get their dog vaccinated and they chose to pump it full of MLM crap. Absolutely not. That is so wrong. I had tried to get the authorities involved, but the dog had died before they followed up. My ex and I did break up a few weeks later once his mask came off and his abusive tendencies reared their ugly head. He never let it go that it was my fault for the dog's death and that it was his job to get the devil out of me. Thank God I got out of there. I still follow the older sister on social media and recently noticed her posting IBLP content, which stands for Institute in Basic Life Principles, and claiming that Josh Duggar is innocent, so I guess they are still just as crazy as before. The younger sister did reach out to me a few years after this event asking if I had found Jesus yet, because if I did, then she would love to have me on her Juice Plus team. I just left her on red. Thank you for taking the time to read. I hope that no one thinks that I am hating on religion. I'm just trying to show the lengths that these companies will go and what the reps will say to try and get you to buy into the business. I can only assume that this family got roped in through church or someone who knew that religion would be the best selling point for them. Either way, I am glad that my first experience with an MLM was so horrible. At least it stopped me from ever getting into one myself. Thanks so much for all that you do. No doubt that they were recruited under the basis of religion. That is faith manipulation. That is a tactic that MLMs will use. It's heartbreaking to hear that a puppy's life was essentially sacrificed to the Juice Plus cult. This is definitely one of the more shocking and astonishing stories I've read. It's clear that the brainwashing was so deeply rooted in this family that they believed that they could prevent and treat illnesses with Juice Plus supplements. And of course, their choice to not vaccinate that dog absolutely played into that. But the Juice Plus clearly didn't help. It didn't save the dog. And instead, they misdirected the blame onto you. They said it was your fault because of your own beliefs that you killed the dog, not them and their recklessness. It's infuriating. I'm not going to get over this story for a long time. This is a very extreme example of the faith manipulation, of the cult-like tactics, of the insane beliefs about the products that can happen within an MLM. So thank you for sending in this story. This story says, "Hi Hannah, I've been listening to your channel for a while and finally decided to send my Arbonne story to you. Please keep my name anonymous. This one would be sort of long. My story isn't too egregious, but it confirms that the Huns really don't like critical thinking and the questions that result from it. A coworker and casual friend of mine joined Arbonne several years ago, and after a few years, she had worked her way up to RVP and was able to quit her full-time job and start bragging about her white Mercedes. Like all the Huns do, she posted about it a lot on social media. I was tempted to look into it further, but I figured there was no way that whatever she was doing was enough money to replace my full-time salary, so I never inquired about the business. After a while, she started posting the results of women she was coaching through the 30 Days to Healthy Living program. I will admit that some of these women were getting great weight loss results because of the eating plan, not the supplements, of course. I am very heavy and have struggled with my weight for several years, so naturally this caught my eye and I decided to get more information. My friend sent me a link to a website that her upline made that outlines the program and added me to a Facebook group for challenge participants. I fell for the pitch and decided to do the 30-day program. I went to order my supplies and I was taken aback by how expensive it was, which was when my friend told me about joining as a rep to get the 35% discount. She assured me that she wouldn't pressure me to sell if I wasn't interested in the business opportunity, a promise that she did actually uphold. That's good. And I want to take this opportunity to point out that most, if not all, MLMs have a preferred customer discount or a rep discount or a wholesale discount. The terminology changes, but basically some kind of percentage off the original retail price if you decide to become a rep yourself. That is 1000% intentional for reasons exactly like this, because you get sticker shock at the crazy over-the-top price and then your upline tells you, oh, well, you should just sign up to be a rep, you'll get the discount, no worries. And with the way that a lot of these compensation plans are structured, that upline, the one who's convincing you to join as a rep, is kind of getting like a double bonus. They're selling you the product and they're most likely also being somehow financially incentivized for getting you in their downline as well. So just think of it this way, that when you see the retail price of MLM products, it's not really the retail price. It's just inflated a little bit extra to make it look like you're going to get a deal if you join as a rep. So I joined with no intention of selling whatsoever. But once I got going with the program, I started paying more attention to my friend's posts and I started thinking, if she can sell enough to get a free car, why can't I? So I reached out to her to have a call about getting my business going. She suggested that I join in on one of their fly-on-the-wall team Zoom calls and then have a one-on-one with her after to answer any questions I had. What's interesting here is that you say your thought process was, if she can sell enough to get a free car, why can't I? I'm wondering if later on down the line you realize that you can't get an Arbonne Mercedes just by selling. You have to recruit too. You can't make it to that Mercedes qualifying rank if you don't have a downline. And that's very interesting because I'm sure a lot of people look at that and they're like, I could hustle, I could sell this, I could sell enough to make it to that rank. Nope, you can't. That's not the way the compensation plan is designed. It would not allow you to rank up that high if you don't recruit. The Zoom call was, of course, very inspiring. We heard from several higher ups in the company about how they started their business from nothing and they grew it and how we could do the same by duplication. They went on and on about time freedom and financial freedom and, of course, the community and how we could lock arms and grow together. I have never heard an MLM pitch before, so I had no idea that this was just a strategy, and it sounded good to me at the time. After listening to the Zoom call, reading the Arbonne materials, and watching a few YouTube videos that my friend recommended, I had several questions. I scheduled a call with her to get those questions answered. Here's a pretty close transcript of my conversation with her. Me: is the car leased by Arbonne? How is that arranged? The Hun: no, you lease the car in your name and Arbonne gives you a monthly car allowance as long as you stay at that rank. Me: that seems odd. So basically once I lease the car, I'm locked in it even if I leave Arbonne since it's in my name? Hun: well, it actually works out better that way because then you can deduct the car, gas, and insurance from your taxes as a business expense. Also, this way if you ever leave Arbonne, you don't lose the car. Me: okay, but I will have to claim the car allowance as income, so isn't that a wash? Furthermore, being able to deduct transportation expenses from my taxes is not as beneficial to me as having a company car that is paid for, insured, and maintained by the company. Hun: well, some people see it that way, but others really like to have control over those things. Some people think of it rationally, and others don't. Is that what she's saying? Me: so this really just seems like an outside sales job more than my own business. That's fine, but are there any other benefits besides commission, like a 401k, health insurance, paid time off, workers' comp protections, etc. The hun. This actually is your own business because you get to decide your own hours and be your own boss. If you opened your own clothing store or became a freelance massage therapist, you wouldn't have those things either. Me. I watched the video you recommended about the compensation plan. The woman was explaining how to maximize earnings by building a team, but her example didn't make sense. When I reviewed it, you would need to sell X dollars and have X team members, at least selling this much per month to equate to what she was saying. I guess I'm not understanding where she came up with her figures. The hun, giggling, "Oh, don't worry, I'm really bad with numbers too. All I know is that when I did what she said, I started making good money." Me. Okay, but I am actually good with numbers, which is why I ran them. And that's how I know that what she's talking about doesn't make sense. The hun changes the subject. At this point, I understood exactly what the opportunity was. An outside sales job where you could earn commission only without any benefits that even a traditional commission-only sales job would offer. I accepted that and decided I would still give it a try to see if I could earn some money. So I decided to hop on the weekly team call. This was where I realized just how predatory this opportunity is. I want to say props to you for doing a little bit of your own research and having questions and having that conversation so that you could make an informed decision. I feel like you went a step further than a lot of people do when they're getting involved with MLMs, which is just that they jump in on hopes and dreams and the glitz and glamour that's being pitched to them. Very infrequently do I see people reporting that, like, I actually did crunch the numbers, I actually did ask the hard questions, and then I still decided to join. The team call was hosted by a woman at the highest rank of the company, and she spent the entire call talking about recruiting. She never mentioned a single product. She said things like, if you want to grow this business, you need to enroll at least 9 consultants a month. You need to keep that consultant recruitment flow going because of the 9 consultants you enroll in May, only 2 of them will last until November. So if you want to build, you have to plan for that failure rate. For the record, 9 new people every single month is a lot of new people to recruit. 9 new recruits a month doesn't sound like much on paper, but when you actually do the math, it's insane. So let's say 9 new people a month for 12 months, that's 108 people that you're going to be recruiting every year. I was able to find one source that says that in 2018, there were 174,000 Arbonne independent consultants. That's obviously a bit of an outdated number, but we're just going to go with it. So if 174,000 Arbonne consultants are each recruiting 108 new consultants every year, that means in 1 year, there would be almost 19 million Arbonne consultants recruited. Absolutely not. So if in a 1-year period, there's 19 million people recruited, and then those 19 million people have to recruit their own 9 new people every month, you would exceed the population of the United States the very next year. So it's actually completely impossible to recruit 9 new people a month. And that's what this person on the Zoom call is suggesting you need to do to be successful. Absolutely insane. That should be the biggest red flag. Then she was discussing where to find people to recruit after exhausting your 100-person list. She said to go to malls, parks, and grocery stores on weekday mornings and look for mothers who looked overwhelmed and exhausted. She said that these people are looking for a change and would be more open to hearing about how you can help them. Barf. What she's actually saying is to look for people who are vulnerable and desperate because they're the most likely to fall for your scam. 1,000%. She literally said, go out in public and find women who look run down and like they would be vulnerable. Yikes. It was at that point I decided there was no way I was comfortable urging people to join this business or even urging them to buy the products. After a while, my upline removed me from the team calls and Facebook groups. Full disclosure though, I love the protein powder and I still buy it. I am still a consultant, so I can get that discount, and I buy 6 to 8 bags at a time, which makes them only cost about $40 a bag. I have tried over a dozen other plant-based protein powders and none taste as good. So I'm willing to admit that I like one product, but never again will I try to get anyone else to buy or sell it. Thanks so much for reading my story. Keep up the good work. I think the biggest takeaway from your story is that when you apply critical thinking and logic and you crunch the numbers, the opportunity starts to crumble. And it becomes apparent that the way that it was pitched to you is a fabrication, it's a facade. And good for you for applying that critical thinking before you got too deep into it. This story says, "Hi Hannah, I won't be using real names for privacy reasons and will not be going into detail about most of my physical ailments except for one. Zeke, you are so in the way. I will not be going into detail about most of my physical ailments except for one because it is vital to the story. I also struggle a lot with writing, so if you need to edit in any way for whatever reason, feel free to do so, and I apologize if it's difficult to understand. Also, trigger warning for child loss and fertility issues, also details of heart attack-like episodes. My sister was a part of doTERRA. She had a really hard time getting pregnant and had lost one pregnancy already. So when she got pregnant with her first child, she would do anything to make sure the pregnancy made it to term and that her child, once born, was kept as healthy as possible. Needless to say, she was vulnerable. At some point, one of her friends decided to pitch doTERRA to her, and she fell for it. She became obsessed with the oils, putting them in food, in drinks, on cuts and scrapes, using them to get rid of rashes. She used some as a natural deodorant, used them in cleaning products. Anything she could use them for, she did. Luckily, she never got to the point that she would actively go against doctors' recommendations in the name of essential oils, but it was still pretty bad. For a while, she just bought the oils and used them, but of course, at some point, she started selling. That's right, that's very common, because if you can convince somebody to start using MLM products, it's only one step further to convince them to join. And the pitch is usually, well, if you love the products, you might as well make some money by selling them, right? So a lot of people get hooked in as a customer first, and then they are pressured to actually join the business opportunity. We were visiting a lot because my niece was still very young, and we wanted to be with them every second we could and be a part of my niece's life from the very beginning. We were very excited for the birth of my niece. Another bit of backstory, I have a lot of health issues. I have food allergies, other allergies, multiple chronic illnesses, skin sensitivities, migraines, just so much. On top of that, I have depression, anxiety, and have been diagnosed with panic disorder, but I hadn't had a panic attack for about 3 years before this story happened. And I had tried multiple medications after multiple tests and consultations with doctors, and nothing seemed to help. I also ended up getting misdiagnosed many times. So because nothing was working, my sister, being one of my best friends in the entire world, wanted to do whatever she could to help me. So she started feeding me essential oils. Not without consent, she did sit me down at 17 years old and said, quote, "I have these oils. This one helps with this one helps with this. Is it okay if I put them in your drink or your food so you can try them and help get rid of this thing you're struggling with?" And I agreed because I didn't know any better, and she was my big sister, so I trusted that she knew what was best for me. So she started putting certain oils in my breakfast or in my drinks or whatever. It didn't help at all. Not long after, I started having intense heartburn attacks, so severe that I could barely breathe, I was nauseous, and I couldn't stay still because the pain was so severe. The first time it happened, my mom started driving me to the ER because I was convinced I was having a heart attack because it was such intense pain and it was throughout my whole chest, not just the area that heartburn tends to be. And the attacks would last anywhere between 30 minutes to 2 hours. Sometimes they would happen multiple days in a row, other times it would be weeks between attacks. But it was awful and it was terrifying. Absolutely! I mean, any kind of intense pain in your chest is alarming in itself. But then on top of it, as somebody who also struggles with anxiety and panic attacks, the whole thing is so much more severe. It is so much more scary, especially when it's lasting for this prolonged amount of time, several hours. But because of my chronic illnesses, I had convinced myself that it was just one of those that had gotten worse. And I just thought it was something else I'd have to come to terms with experiencing regularly. About 4 months after this all started, me and my mom moved out of state. And as soon as we moved, the attacks stopped. We still thought it was part of one of my illnesses and that one of the foods in the state I lived in previously was triggering it. But now that I'm not having that food, I would be fine. Everything is good. Maybe a year and a half after we moved out of state, my sister made a trip with my now 2 nieces to come visit me and my mom, and while she was visiting us, she started putting those same oils into my food and drinks as another attempt at helping my illnesses. And not even a few days later, I had another one of those heartburn attacks. This time, my mom did drive me to the ER to be safe. It was much closer to where we lived in this new state, so I was still in it by the time we arrived. The doctors almost immediately took me back for fear of being something life-threatening. They did tests and determined that it was not a heart attack or anything to do with my heart at all, and they checked my lungs, which sounded fine, and based on my medical history, they suggested it was probably just super intense heartburn or a panic attack. So we went home. I had 2 more during my sister's visit, and once she left, the attacks stopped altogether. Me and my mom talked, and we think think that it was for sure the oils that I was having a bad reaction to, especially since it wasn't the first time. My sister had tried using them on my skin and they made me break out. Luckily, my sister has parted ways with the essential oils, but she still falls victim to MLMs all the time. Only now she just sticks to selling clothes, just the MLM she does it for changes often. Thank you for reading everyone's stories and sharing the warning sign. You've helped me avoid multiple MLMs and realize that my friends were in some that I didn't even realize were MLMs. Very scary story, very scary experience. And personally, with this account, knowing that you had these heartburn attacks around the time that you were ingesting oils, and then they stopped for a period of over a year when you were not consuming oils, and then they started up again once your sister continued putting them in your food. In my opinion, that is too coincidental to be a coincidence. I do acknowledge there isn't a foolproof way to say the oils caused this, especially when you're dealing with so many chronic illnesses and things like that, but I think the timing is very interesting, and also the fact that you've used the oils topically and they caused a reaction externally. So if they're causing a reaction on your skin, why wouldn't they cause a reaction on the soft tissues in your stomach? And clearly the benefits don't outweigh the costs here. Your sister is well-intentioned. She's doing this because she believes that it's going to help you, but the side effect of that is that these oils are apparently sending you into these heartburn attacks. And that's not helpful. That's not enjoyable. So I feel the need to just reiterate again, there is no evidence to support that ingesting oils does anything for you. And so knowing that, I've always wanted to just err on the side of caution. Like, if there's no proven benefits, why risk it? We also don't know what the harmful effects are. So why would you risk it, right? Why would you ingest the oils to try and cure something else if it's just going to create new, equally, if not more unpleasant symptoms? Very fascinating story. Like I said, it's too coincidental to be a coincidence. And this really does speak to the fact that people who are in MLMs, who are essentially prescribing things, are doing so with perhaps a good intent, but without truly knowing what the effects are. Thank you for sending this story in, and please remember, everyone out there, don't ingest essential oils. This one says, hey, I recently found your page and have been completely obsessed. I love your videos and I have a few MLM stories, but this is an interesting story I would like to share. Back in 2020, during the lockdown, I was bored as ever, so I was spending more time on Instagram. I started to realize that this girl, let's call her Emily, I used to go to middle school and high school with, started constantly posting about Monat. I genuinely was interested in what she was talking about, but not too interested where I went out of my way to ask. About a week later of the constant story posts and uploads about her Zoom calls and the fancy incentives, I couldn't help but ask what Monat was all about. She immediately responded, and I was told everything that a typical Hun would say. I was skeptical, but at the time I was desperate for a stream of income due to the lockdown and my job temporarily closing. Yes, 2020 was an MLM's heyday. So much financial panic, so much uncertainty, an increased consumption of social media, and an increased need and desire for work from home business opportunities. MLMs went wild. Emily basically ended up summarizing this absurd price to start this fake business, and I genuinely didn't have the money at the time to do that. So I told Emily that I was interested but unsure of the business and I would like to do more research on my own. Emily literally messaged me about 10 times within 2 hours after our conversation. She was asking what was holding me back or what I'm doing now that could make me more successful than Monat. I finally responded telling her that, simply put, it was just out of my budget and I didn't have a job because of the lockdown. It was impossible for me to start. She told me to open up a credit card or to ask my boyfriend for money, which I know if I asked him, he would, but for one, I would not open up a credit card for that, and her desperation was giving me a bad feeling. I told her I would think about it, hoping that it would make her stop pushing it. Excellent point. As crazy as this sounds, I think this might be the first time that anyone has ever said the desperation was off-putting. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way, but I've never seen it written out like that. And what a great point. If someone is over the top messaging you, trying to convince you, giving you all these solutions and trying to overcome your objections like crazy, all of a sudden it's like, girl, back off. Like, what's the big deal? And that in itself is kind of a red flag. Like, if you're trying so hard to convince me to join, it must be pretty hard to convince people to join. Finally, Emily left my message on read, but a couple minutes later, she ended up posting a screenshot of our messages trying to say that I was poor and that having an unsupportive significant other is 98% of women's downfall in America, and that joining Monat would save people like me. She didn't block out my name or anything. I also am not sure where she gathered that percentage from. What on earth? Is she making up statistics right now? That would not surprise me. That's very typical of people in MLMs, actually. But it's almost like she's worried that she's not gonna get you, she's not gonna recruit you, but she might as well screenshot your messages and try and use them to her advantage. That is playing dirty. I do not like that. I responded asking what was wrong with her, and she blocked me. I told my boyfriend about the incident, and this is when he explained to me what an MLM was and how she may actually be the one in desperate need of money. About 2 months after that, I got an Instagram follow from guess who? Emily. I guess she unblocked me, and she ended up sending me a DM complimenting my feed and asking what I used in my hair because she had a great product recommendation for me and how there were all these sales going on. I thought it was strange and was wondering if she remembered that she completely tried to embarrass me on her Instagram story and called me out by name. I may be wrong for this, but honestly speaking, I did decide to be a little petty. And I let her talk me through all the way up to the point where she was just about to get me to sign up on her team and to purchase some of the products. She told me there was a trip to a Monations event and I would get so much training there, blah, blah, blah. Right as she was about to complete my purchase and sign me up to be on her team, I casually said, "Do you think me, a poor person, could afford all of this?" Hoping she would remember what she posted about me. Emily left my message on read at first, but actually ended up sending me a voice message begging me to buy something or to sign up. I could hear her holding back the tears. So I did feel kind of bad for making her believe that I was going to buy something or sign up because she may have needed it. But she also disrespected me. I ended up telling her that she should just find a real job and even sent her an application to my job since they were going to reopen. She left that message on read. I have not heard from the Hun since. But I haven't seen her post anything about Monet in a pretty long time. Hopefully she was able to figure something out. Thanks for reading the story. I really love your videos. I'm kind of wondering, maybe this doesn't make sense because she had to obviously unblock you, but maybe there is potential that she didn't really remember what she did a few months prior, because in 2020, especially with everything going on, it was like a social media rampage. People were so highly encouraged to go on Instagram or Facebook and just go down the list of people and pitch it to as many people as possible. So I'm wondering if maybe there was a chance that she didn't remember that previous interaction, because if she was working the biz the way her uplines were most likely pushing her to, she was probably messaging hundreds of people a day, and that's a lot of different conversations to keep track of in your mind. But then again, if she had to block you and then unblock you to message you again, you would think that she would have some recollection as to why she blocked you, but who knows? Was this petty? Yes. Would I recommend doing this? No. However, what she did was completely uncalled for, and it's not okay that she's posting screenshots of your private messages with your username in there to make a point about unsupportive partners or something. Like, that's not okay. And who's to say what I would have done in that situation? Either way, it does make for an entertaining story. And the fact that she's not posting about Monet anymore is a pretty good sign. Hopefully she came to the realization that it is really difficult to recruit people and that it wasn't worth her time and she was able to find something more legitimate. This story says, "Hey Hannah, I'm a huge fan of your videos. I wanted to drop in a story about my experiences being hounded in person by Avon reps, because even though it was some years ago, it still sticks in my mind to this day. I live in the UK, and where I live specifically, Avon had always been a company that comes up as a popular choice for locals, though it's dwindled somewhat over the years and with good reason. Thankfully, the products you received were only ones that your customers bought and not what you had to buy in order to remain active. However, the amount of time and energy you had to put into delivering brochures, collecting them, and then distributing product in person was tiring and not very profitable, especially if you didn't drive. My mom was an Avon rep for a while many years back, and I remember how much work she put in for a small group of local customers, but never really getting anything back. Knowing this, I was already very savvy about it at a young age, and it helped me be more informed about MLMs in the future, and probably led me down the rabbit hole of finding out more about them in the first place. Cut to me, age 18, leaving college for the day, and really keen to just get home. And I get my first experience of being collared by an Avon rep in the flesh. She pulled up next to me in her car and rolled the window down, indicating that she she wanted to ask me something. I gave her a smile, thinking she wanted directions, and I went over. I'm usually quite socially anxious, but I knew the area super well, so I was ready to answer her query. I say, "Hi, do you need directions?" She replied with, "Oh no, I'm fine, thank you. I wanted to ask about you. I'm from Avon, and I'm looking for some young, fresh faces to represent this area. Would you be interested?" Being someone who knew from growing up how these go, I immediately said no thank you and started to walk away. She proceeds to then follow me in the car. Eventually, she gets out. After I've walked a good distance down the street and she calls after me. I turn around confused to find her almost running over, asking if I'm sure, and I tell her no thank you, I'm really not interested. I thought that was it, but instead she proceeds to ask me for my phone number, address, etc., as well as trying to give me leaflets in case I change my mind. I politely decline once more and then walk away. She no longer follows me at this point and instead seems to just wait until someone else comes by. I told my mom when I got home and she said I made the right choice. But this wasn't the last I'd see her. A few years later, now in my mid-20s, I was walking my dog and we were headed back to the house, just a couple streets away. A car pulled up as I was walking by and I noticed two women in it looking at me, one who seemed familiar. I didn't think much of it since it was a residential area, so visitors and residents always pulled up on the pavements. I kept walking, but as I did, the car would keep slowly moving along a short distance until one rolled down the window and called me over. Again, thinking this must just be someone who's lost and can't find an address, I went over. Well, wouldn't you know, it was the same woman who collared me last time. Both of the women had huge grins on their faces, the lady in the passenger side clutching the Avon leaflets as well as a notebook and pen. Before they could say anything, I said no last time and it's not changed since, and I walked away with my dog. Good for you. Mic drop. Nice try, lady. You tried this a couple years ago. Not gonna happen. Thankfully, they did not follow me again. I called my brother who was home that day and he came over to meet me and made sure I got home. It was really creepy and unacceptable to have these women practically stalking you just to sell some makeup. I'm surprised I handled it so well considering how I usually react in situations where I feel anxious. I don't know how many people they had done this to, but it must have been a lot to be doing it for that many years. Clearly the approach did not work if I was unlucky enough to be collared twice. To this day, I still leave my house wondering if she's going to make another appearance. It's been 5 years and not a sign of her yet. Thank you for reading. This is the first story I've ever read of MLM reps in cars hunting people down on the street. Love that, not. Typically we hear stories about people who go into an establishment like a restaurant or a grocery store or a retail space, and then somebody comes up to them and starts to pitch them. I have never heard about you just being out on a walk, trying to get home, taking your dog out, and people pulling up to you on the street and trying to pitch you. That is such an unwelcome interaction. Let people walk their dogs in peace, for the love of God. And it's also alarming that there were a few years between these two instances. Clearly she's been in the game for a while, and how much time has she wasted out of her life, and how much gas has she wasted driving around town trying to find people on the street to pitch to. I cannot think of a less desirable way to spend my time. And you have to imagine that it doesn't work out for them most of the time, right? Out of how many people actually say yes? If I had to take a guess, I would say not many. What a sad way to spend that much time of your life over the course of several years. And with that, my friends, it's all the stories I have for you for this horror stories video. Again, if you have your own you'd like to send in, the instructions are down below. And thank you again to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to check out the link in the description box below and use the code Alonzo55 at checkout for 55% off your first month at Scentbird. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in my next one real soon.